Hey everybody, welcome back to Salesforce in Under 5, and today we'll be describing the capabilities of the declarative process automation features. So let's go over declarative versus programmatic. Declarative, the definition would be denoting high-level programming languages that can be used to solve problems without requiring the programmer to specify an exact procedure to be followed. So in Salesforce, these would be your point and click development tools. The advantage is they're easier to develop, they're easier to deploy, and they're easier to change. You can avoid writing test classes, and it's actually easier to understand um, from an outside perspective. So other admins or developers can look at your point and click tools and be able to understand what a certain process is doing without diving too deep into it. So programmatic, on the other hand, is of the nature or according to a program schedule or method. In other words, it's something that's built by code. It's more robust, but slightly more complicated. An example of these would be Apex and Visualforce. So the first declarative tool in the developer toolhouse is the workflow rule. It's simple and easy to create. A lot of admins are familiar with a workflow rule, and it can fire when a record is created or edited to meet a specific criteria. So it looks for a criteria being met, and then it executes an action. So for example, if an opportunity is set to sold, um, then it fires an action. And it can also support a time-based action. An example, or not an example, but these actions that a workflow rule can fire are, it could create a task, send an outbound message, update a record, and send an email alert. The next declarative tool is Process Builder, and Process Builder is a visual tool to automate processes. It's a little more robust than workflow rules. It supports multiple if-else statements and supports multiple criteria. So if a criteria is met, and execute an action, and optionally, if the criteria is not met, it could execute another action or look for another criteria. And it also supports time-based action. The actions would include creating a record, updating a record, invoking a process, invoking Apex, sending an email alert, submitting for approval, post a chatter, and launch a flow. So you can see a lot more actions available in Process Builder. All right, Cloud Flow Designer is perhaps the most robust declarative tool, and it's a visual canvas flow designer, and it's typically started by a user by clicking a button. A user can launch a flow. It can also be called by a process or Apex, and it has the most advanced actions and criterias. So typically how a flow designer is used is it's used to take input and display output to a user. So like a customer service wizard, let's say we have a customer service rep, they launch a flow whenever they're on the phone with a customer, and it guides them through questions and answers and if else statements. Ask for the customer's name and address. Has a couple of other fields, and when they submit it, it can, create a record or update a record. And it also supports time-based action. And these actions include creating a record, and that's any record, even if it's not related to the Cloudflow, or even if it's not related to the record that initially triggered the process or the flow. It can update any record, delete records, invoke a process, invoke Apex, send an email, and not an email alert, this is an email. It could submit for approval, post a chatter, and launch a flow. The final declarative tool is the approval process, and this starts when a record is submitted for approval. It could also be started by a process, by Cloudflow, or Apex. These can all submit a record for approval. So what it basically does is it checks for an approval criteria being met, and then it requires an approval. So for example, let's say we have a field called discount on the opportunity, and when it gets to over 30%, we want to require the VP of sales to approve it. So it can check for this criteria, the user can submit it for approval, and then the VP of sales will get a message asking them to approve it. And these actions include update a related record, send an email alert, send an outbound message to a third party, application or through API and create a task. So a lot of the tests will be trying to understand or determine which declarative tool is best for a given scenario. So you're going to want to know each of the actions and the limitations of each of the declarative tools. So make sure you spend a lot of time memorizing those. All right, that's all. I think I'm 30 seconds over 5 minutes, but I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it was beneficial to you.